So today I'm going to talk about a televisual tragedy we're studying this week, and that's the Challenger Shuttle explosion. And I'm going to come at you with a little bit of a personal tale about this because I'm a Gen Xer, and for most people of my generation, and that's people born between 1965 and 1980, Generation X, for most of us, this is the big televisual tragedy that our generation remembers quite significantly because we were children when this occurred, and it remains the primary tragedy, even with other events that occur until, of course, the events of September 11th, 2001. And so, even today, this is a day that I can remember really, really well. And so, I'm just going to talk about it. I think as you worked on your oral history projects, you might have found hearing about history from that kind of personal perspective a little bit interesting. And I actually remember this day pretty darn well. And I wasn't that young. I was a junior high school student. I was about 13 years old, and I was in 8th grade at Blessed Sacrament School in Madison, Wisconsin, on the west side of town. And the reason that this became a big deal for students was because this is the first civilian in space, and they had like a big contest, and it was a way to like generate interest in students in math and science and the space program in general. And so there was a call for who wants to be the first teacher in space, and so across the country, teachers applied, and they got down to like the top 10 finalists, and there was over 10,000 applicants. This was not a small contest, and it was kind of exciting. Like, would someone from your state get chosen, maybe, or your hometown? What if it was your teacher? And so it was kind of pretty interesting, and people would follow this. And the other reason that this was kind of big at this time period is there's only one channel that's carrying the space shuttle launch live. This is 1986. We've been launching shuttles for a while. It was still news, but it wasn't big news. But CNN was there, and this was cable in the classroom was starting to become kind of a thing in this time period, and so you'd get like cable clips that you could watch in school, and um, kind of like current events that were interesting to youth but very topical. And so both of those things are kind of converging here to have a student population watching at a very high level. So we have cable in the classroom using this new technology of cable television to connect with today's youth. And then we also have this contest. This Krista McAuliffe ends up winning it. So she's the winning teacher, and she has to go through like a training program. And like you follow the whole thing. There's like clips about her, and like in the current event magazines, she's a big deal. And so students are excited about this. And when the shuttle goes up, we all have televisions brought into our classrooms if they're not already like cabled in long term. And again, I went to a little private school, a little Catholic school, Blessed Sacrament, and my sister goes there as well, and that'll become part of the story in a minute here. And we didn't do a lot of this. Like, I would hear about this whole cable in the classroom thing from my public school friends more. And at the Catholic school, we were still like on the AV cart system, and they would kind of roll in a cart for like special occasions. But even us, even we got the television for this day. This was a big deal. And so they're launching the shuttle during school hours, and the date's January 28th, 1986. And again, I'm like a 8th grader at Blessed Sacrament School, so I'm like about 13 years old. And at first, when you see it, you guys will watch the clip this week too, and everything looks pretty normal. I mean, it, the it goes up in the air, the smoke starts going, and then you can kind of tell right away that something's not okay. And our teacher, I remember, like, she made like a sound, like a gasp or a and I was like, oh shit, because oops, I cussed it. I went, oh shit, in my head. Didn't cuss at the Catholic school, trust me. But I was like, oh, because I knew from that like, I saw the footage and I kind of knew, and then my little head told me, like, my little eighth grade self was like, that's not right, that's not okay. And then when I heard the grown up in the room make an audible sound, like, I knew it was real bad, and that the people, because it seems like so abstract on television, but you knew that was live and real, and those were real live people, and we had just witnessed them all die, and it was like pretty shocking. Like, I don't think like all the kids got it at first either. It was like people didn't laugh or anything like that or act inappropriately, so maybe everyone did get it and they just sat there stunned in the classroom I was in. But I knew my sister, man. She's just a couple of years younger, so she's not like a kindergartner or first or second grader. But she was, she's only like 11. She's still pretty young. And so I went into her classroom and found her like right away. And she was, maybe I wasn't supposed to leave my class. I don't know. This was a pretty small school. It wasn't very far away. I knew right where she was. And she was already kind of like crying. And then of course, we're at a Christian school, a Catholic school, and Sister Stella, she got on the microphone or the intercom system across the school, and she said something like, "We're going to have a moment of silence now for those brave Americans who gave their lives in the Challenger Shuttle explosion." And then that kind of confirmed everything, and it was real strange because we still like had classes. I don't remember. I'll have to ask my sister. She kind of might know more. Sometimes she has more recall, but as far as I remember, we went back to school, and it wasn't like normal. But it wasn't until our parents picked us up like a few hours later that you started like processing things. So it was like we all watched it, we all saw it, but I don't remember having a conversation about it in the classroom with the adults. It was like that period was over. This was terrible. We gave a prayer and a moment of silence, and then a couple hours later, when my mom picked us up, she was like, "Oh my gosh, what happened?" And we told her from our perspective, and we went home, and then we kind of looked at the news and talked about it then. And then we'll see this in our clips too this week in our screenings. It was supposed to be the State of the Union address, and Ronald Reagan is the president at this time during the 1980s. He's the president for most of that era, and he's coming out to deliver the State of the Union address that night. So there's already like a presidential speech expected on the networks, and then after the shuttle explosion occurs, I actually do remember watching him on television when I was a child, when I was like 13 years old, and I didn't like critique it the way I do now as a TV history teacher, or a student even in a class like this, but he gets on the medium of television, and instead of delivering the State of the Union address, he recognizes the moment. He realizes the impact that seeing the shuttle explode had on America as a whole and on the children and youth in particular. He uses that address to try to calm the nation, to unite us, to bring us together. And, he's a very televisual president. Ronald Reagan was a Hollywood actor. He knows how to use the medium. He knows how to direct his gaze, and he knows how to sound sincere. And he does a really great job using that medium the way that we looked at earlier in the semester with John F. Kennedy and the Cuban Missile Crisis. So anyway, I just wanted to give you a little like personal, like what an actual Gen Xer at that time period kind of went through that day. And I'll do that again for September 11th, 2001, because I'm starting to realize that my students are getting younger, I'm getting a little bit older, and not everyone actually participated in September 11th, 2001 in a way that was like super meaningful because they were very young, or at this point, some people, if they're young enough, hadn't even been born yet. And so I'm going to give a little personal account on that day as well. All right, thanks for your attention.